when somebody asks you where you're from, that is their attempt to be friendly. That's them trying to form a human connection with you. That's another human being reaching out to you, a fellow human being, in an effort to relate to you and get to know you. If this irritates you or offends you, that's a sign of something wrong inside of you. You're the problem. Today, our cancellation begins with a person whose name is a fun riddle for someone like myself who infamously has so much trouble pronouncing names. I'll take one pass at this and we'll go with whatever pronunciation happens to pop out. The name is Raksha Vasudevin. Raksha Vasudevin. There we go. She's a writer for the New York Times and Vice, and she's certainly the kind of person who would not be at all amused by me making jokes about her unpronounceable name. In fact, Miss V, as we'll call her, recently went viral with a tweet about the harrowing challenges immigrants face in this country. She posts a picture of a sign that her Uber driver had posted in his car, and she captions, "Seen in today's Uber, thinking of making a duplicate to hang around my neck." And then the sign says, which the Uber driver had posted, "Dear passenger, please do not ask me, where are you from? The where are you from conversation makes me sick, frustrated, and uncomfortable. Thanks for your understanding." Now, until the sane parts of Twitter got a hold of this tweet and started responding, which led Miss V to deleting it entirely, many of the responses were from other immigrants applauding the Uber driver and voicing their agreement. I think just one example should suffice. A woman named Kian Julie Wang, who identifies herself as ex-undocumented, as well as a litigator, a vegan yogi, and an obsessive dog mom, all those from her directly, chimed in with this. "I once had a white Uber driver ask me this, and when I said, 'Here,' he said, 'Obviously we all live here now, but where are you really from?' I ignored him, and he asked again louder. I said I wasn't comfortable answering nor talking. He got very angry, louder, and insisted it was a very fair topic of convo, and why wouldn't I just answer him? It was so scary I had to call my husband and keep him on the phone the whole ride. PSA to white people, you are not entitled to interrogate the personal history of BIPOC or any random human for that matter. The only time I welcome this question is when a new Asian immigrant is looking to bond/chat in a possibly shared first language. Many Koreans mistake me for Korean, which I take as a compliment. I once got scolded by an old Korean lady in K-Town for abandoning my mother tongue." You see, if you're white, then you don't have permission to speak to her. But if you're Asian, then you can actually go up to her and scream at her, and she'll take it as a compliment. I can only hope that this woman's husband explained to her that the Uber driver was annoyed because she was being incredibly rude. But I think we can be fairly certain that she would not have married the kind of man who would tell her the truth in situations like this or in any other situation. Her husband is likely as neutered as her dogs are, we might assume. But in any event, this all is quite common among young leftist immigrants. Now, I don't say that it's common among immigrants in general. Most immigrants have probably never heard of the concept of microaggressions, and once they do hear about it, they begin to second-guess their decision to come to this confused society in the first place. But on the left, it's considered a microaggression and othering if you say anything to a foreigner which acknowledges that they are foreigners. They don't want to talk about that aspect of themselves, except for all the times when they do want to talk about that aspect of themselves. In fact, Miss V's bio on her website says this: "Born in India and raised in Canada, Raksha Vasudevin is a writer and former aid worker." That's the very first sentence of her biography. The first thing she wants anyone reading her bio to know is that she was born in India. And yet she doesn't want it to come up in casual conversation? The self-contradiction is evident across the board. The left, of course, relentlessly insists that we celebrate immigrants, minorities, quote-unquote BIPOC, etc., and yet at the same time, we're not necessarily given permission to notice that anyone actually is an immigrant or minority. They'll tell us that, that they will tell us when we're allowed to notice it and in what way and what we can and cannot say when we do notice it, if we've been given permission to notice it at all. We find a very similar dynamic with sexual orientation and gender identity, because on the one hand, the gay leftist or the trans leftist, they go to extraordinary lengths to advertise their LGBT membership, and they demand to be celebrated and worshiped for it. But on the other hand, just because you're required to celebrate it doesn't mean you're allowed to ask them about it or talk about it or make note of it. Again, they will make the rules that govern how you can speak to them or speak about them, and the rules are subject to change anytime without notice. You must not only follow the rules, but figure out a way to read their minds so that you can know the rules ahead of time. Because you also can't ask them about the rules. Can't do that. You just have to know. You have to sense it intuitively. Is this one of those moments when it's a microaggression for me to ask them about their identity, or it's a microaggression to not ask them? Well, you have to know. You have to read their mind. This is how they believe human interactions work, and they're wrong. So let me explain the reality. And I'm speaking now directly to Miss V if she happens to see this. Here's what you need to know. First of all, when somebody asks you where you're from, that is their attempt to be friendly. That's them trying to form a human connection with you. That's another human being reaching out to you, a fellow human being, in an effort to relate to you and get to know you. If this irritates you or offends you, that's a sign of something wrong inside of you. You're the problem. That's your hang-up. That's your issue. At best, it's a pet peeve. But here's the thing about pet peeves. They're your problem. I feel the same about pet peeves as I do about actual pets. You can have them, lots of people do, but don't make them my problem. Okay? I don't care if you have a dog, I don't want to have to listen to him or find his defecation on my lawn. Keep it to yourself. Except in this case, it's worse than a pet peeve because it's ego, which causes you to be offended by basic questions about yourself. This is your own weird little narcissistic impulse. Now, you may tell yourself that because you don't want to talk about yourself in these situations, it's actually the opposite of narcissism, but that's not the case. It's narcissism because you, again, like any leftist, you believe that you have the right to set the rules for the conversation. You think you can and should control what people say to you. You want to set the parameters, not just on what strangers say to you, but on how they perceive you. Sometimes you want to be perceived as an immigrant, other times you don't. And you think the rest of the world has to just dance along to whatever tune you happen to be humming at any given moment. No, that's not the world's responsibility. The responsibility, in fact, goes the other way. It is your responsibility to suppress and manage your personal hang-ups and unreasonable irritations so they don't become a burden on other people. You must conform yourself to the standards of a civilized society. Society isn't going to conform to you. Random strangers on the street, they don't know about your ridiculous pet peeves. All they know is that you're another person, a fellow human being. They might try to strike up conversation because they want to know more than that. They want to connect with you. And in your case, they'll quickly learn that the most pertinent facts about you are that you're rude, unpleasant, overly sensitive, manipulative, and controlling. But at least they'll never find out exactly where you're from. So you get your way in that respect, I suppose. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.